Hey, it's Eldon back here with another episode of Crazy Dad's Coleman Projects. I am going to do one today on how I go about painting or prepping and painting the founts of the lanterns that I'm restoring and modifying. And this one today is going to be one, I'm doing the video on the rebuild of it in a different video, but I wanted to focus this video on the repaint of the fount particularly. I might get into some of the other parts here in the process, but what I'm going to do, I've got this, let's see here, right there. Got this old fount off of 1960 220, I think it's an E, if I remember right. That's what we're working on. And as you can see, it's covered with spray paint and things, but the fount's in really good shape. But I'm going to customize this one, not just do a standard stock restoration. I've got others that are like that, and this one, I just decided that's what I want to do with it. So our end result here is going to be a nice shiny black founted lantern with a green vent on it. And so that's where we're going to go right now. So I'm going to switch the camera around here and show you the process of how I go about stripping these and prepping them and painting them. I'll be back in just a second. Alrighty, here we go. So my first step here is to get the old paint off of here and the rust and things like that, although this one doesn't have much of that to deal with. But I do that by using the wire wheel on my bench grinder. That has worked really well on the steel founts. I've also, I think I've done it on a brass one before. You just have to be more careful because the wheel can damage the brass if you really go to pressing hard on it. But at this point right now, we've got a steel one. We are going to now strip the paint off of it. I've got a brand new wheel here. I go through these things and they kind of wear out over time. But what I found is as you're using them, the bristles get dulled out and they all get leaned over in one direction because of the pressure you're putting on it. So every so often you need to take them off, turn them around, and put them back on the other way. And you get quite a bit of mileage out of one of them. Anyway, I picked this one up at Harbor Freight today. It was less than $5, and I just use them for all kinds of cleaning stuff on all the restoration projects that I do. But anyway, here we go. You definitely want to have safety glasses on doing this because it's going to throw wires at you and things too. So it's just the basic steps of it right here. And you look there, that's how quick it takes the paint off. Yeah, so it's pretty much that simple. Let's go down along the bottom here. All right, so there you can see how well that's going to take the paint off of everything. It does a super good job. It does a good job on the lighter rust. If you get some really deep pitted rust, you're going to have to really work the wheel to get it all out, and you might want to be doing some other options like soaking it in a rust remover or something like that. But anyway, you've got the picture there. I'm going to finish this up off camera, and then we'll show you the result once I've got it all stripped off here. There we go. That probably took me about 15 minutes worth of work on that wire wheel, but it really strips it down nicely. There are a couple of exceptions I'll show you here, and I'll explain to you why I don't get too worried about that. The first one is right here around the filler. Let's see if I can get any better light on there. You can see that my wire wheel won't reach all the way down in there. And I At first, I'm kind of concerned about that, but there's two reasons that it doesn't bother me too badly. First of all, because the paint that Coleman originally put on these things was probably a better paint than what I'm using today. At least by the time they got it baked on and stuff, it probably stuck better. So that paint is still intact. It's holding on, so if I paint over the top of it, it's not a huge deal. The second one is, as I put a coat of primer on there, I'm going to build thickness, and it's going to end up flowing over that pretty good. Where'd my flashlight go here? So I want to show you here. This is a black one that I've done, and actually is exactly what I'm going to do with this one. Get the flashlight going here for you. If I get down in there, I can't get it to where the light's really reflecting well off of it. Let me see if I can take that cap off. That'll let me see any better in there. Might help a little bit, but yeah, it's just when I look closely at this one, if I look super close, I can actually see a tiny bit of roughness in there. But keep in mind, I've painted a lot of cars before, so I'm pretty sensitive to that kind of thing. And under black paint, that is almost not showing up. And so for what I'm doing here on these lanterns, that is perfectly good for me. The second place that you have a hard time reaching, get that out of the way, is the bottom, inside the rim on the bottom. You can see there, all around the rim, there was a place right there where the paint had actually flaked off, so that kind of came off. But all the way around there, there's not much I can do. I've actually gone to a smaller wire wheel and gotten in there, and it gets a tiny bit more of it off, but not much. But my experience has been that those two things are okay and leave me with a nice looking painted fount there when I'm done. So that's the step that I'm going to be at that point. Now I'm going to get the thing ready to actually prime and paint. And the main two things I've got to do, I'm going to put some tape around these threads here to keep paint out of there. And I have either thread in a plug or a dummy valve there or something, or put some, I've wadded up and put paper towel in there before. But those are really the only two things you have to do there. And then right before I prime it, I'm going to wipe the whole thing down with alcohol. And the reason I like to use alcohol, there's other things you can use. If you're a professional painter, you might have things laying around, but common household isopropyl alcohol works just fine. The reason I like alcohol versus lacquer thinner, which I do happen to have right here, I could wipe it down with lacquer thinner, but one of the things I've learned over all my years in painting cars and stuff like that is lacquer thinner actually leaves a residue on things. And so a little film, it takes all the oils off, but it leaves its own residue there. And that tends to make things not stick as well. So if you use alcohol, it doesn't leave a residue, but it does break down the oils and gets them off and gets it ready to paint. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get this taped up and plugged up and ready to go, and then we'll be back in a second. There we go. Got the filler spout taped up so we don't get paint. I don't want paint inside of the spout because the fuel will probably dissolve it and potentially clog everything up. I also don't want it on the threads here. It's not the end of the world if it gets on the bottom few, but better to just keep it off. Got this old valve threaded in there, and I can use that. I could hang it from that if I wanted to, and sometimes I have on some other things. The only problem is it makes it hard to paint around that. So I think what I'm going to do here is show you the other option that I've used a lot, and that is to take a piece of blue shop towel there and just put it in there. And it doesn't have to even do anything. You just don't want it to fall out or fall in for that matter. So anyway, got it to that point. Now it's ready to go. I'm going to hang it by a wire from one of these holes in the pump housing here. And the next thing that I'm going to do then is wipe it down with alcohol, and I will be ready to start priming it. So let's talk a little bit here about paints that you can use on these things. So I'm doing this for fun as a hobby. I'm not trying to create a masterpiece or something that's bulletproof. Most of these ones that I am restoring like this, I'm not going to take them out on a camping trip and use. If I'm going to do that, I'll take one of these babies out here that's it's been restored for all intents and purposes, but it's still got original paint, and even with it's all scratch and dings on it, then I don't have to worry about it. But on this one here, I want this one to kind of be a showpiece. I'm actually building it to be a mate to this little 200A that I've got here. And so when I'm doing this, I'm not going to worry about using high quality automotive paint. First of all, because it's expensive. Second of all, because it's got all kinds of noxious fumes that go with it and things like that. When I'm using the spray paints that I'm going to be using, I should wear a respirator. Yeah, everybody should, but I don't have to because it's not nearly as toxic as automotive paint. However, if you're going for a real show quality shine, then maybe you're going to want to go with an automotive paint on them, and you can take your old fount down to the paint store, and they can color match it for you and get you the kind of paint you want. Based on my experience, if you want the toughest thing that you can put on them here, you're probably going to want to go with a urethane paint rather than a base coat clear coat. If you're going for shine, you might want to go with a base coat clear coat. But if you'll put, they used to call it Emron, but the generic word for it is a urethane paint, and it glosses up really well, but once it hardens on there, it's super tough and scratch resistant. So you could use that. But in all of my playing around in my hobby here, this is what I use, is all of my Rust-Oleum up there for the most part. And on this one, I am going to use a gray primer on it. And underneath that gray primer, I am going to use a Rust-Oleum Gloss Black. So this is what we're going to be gunning for as we do it. I have found, put these two up here. Let me go grab one other can. Let's go with this one up here. So Rust-Oleum makes these two different lines of paint that are readily available from Walmart and home improvement stores and stuff like that. I don't actually know what they call this series. At my store, we like to call it the Scotch brand or Scotchman brand because of the little tartan looking strap that goes around it. But this is their 2X brand, and this is the other Rust-Oleum that they sell. So in my experience of spraying this on lanterns, on stoves, I even use this on my model cars that I like to build, I get better results with this type of Rust-Oleum than I do with this. They both go on great and work fine. This one tends to gloss out on its own better for me than this one does. Not that I won't use this one if I don't find the right color in that one, but that's what I've learned here, just in my experience. And for the most part, I've been doing this in the winter. Haven't yet gone through a summer of trying to paint these things. But what I'm also finding is when I use this and the primer in the winter time, that it actually dries very quickly in my garage in the cold, which was surprising to me. So that's going to be my next step here. I'm going to clean it up with the alcohol, get my wire in here so I can hang it, so I can spray the whole thing rather than trying to do the top and then the bottom. I've done that before, but I just like to be able to do the whole thing at once. So I'll clean it up with the alcohol. I'm going to put I'll put a good heavy coat of the primer on it, I think. I don't think I'll end up with 2 coats of primer. And then with the black, or whichever color I'm using, I usually do that in about 2 coats. to get the shine that I want. So I'm going to come back to that. Just wanted to go into that a little bit here. You can use automotive paints and primers, and more power to you. If you do, you will get a better finish. But hey, I'm just playing with a hobby here. Lanterns don't, especially the ones that I'm painting, aren't worth a fortune like a car is, so I really don't care. It just gives me a nice, pretty paint job for the shelf queens that I'm building, which that's mostly what they're for me, is I want the colors and I want the variety, and the ones that I'm real concerned about their originality, then I'm going to do something different on them. So there you go. I will get this cleaned up and hanging, and we'll come back and show you the primer process. All right, I have my fount all cleaned up there. I've wiped it down with alcohol. I've gone over it thoroughly to get all the lint off of it, things like that. So it is ready for us to spray a coat of primer on it. And we're going to be using this Rust-Oleum 2X primer in a, let's see what's called, flat gray. And pretty basic. I've shaken it up real good, so I'll start out here. I don't know if I can do this all on camera or not, but I want to go down in the hard to reach places first. Like that, and then I'll catch the bottom of it. And I got to go up here and kind of do the same thing around the harder to reach places up on the top here. And then go in and kind of fill in the gaps in between all of that. Making sure that you get everything covered with it. Yeah. Sorry, you guys are going to get drunk watching me paint here. All right, I think I got a good coat on the whole thing. I don't want to go too much because I don't want it to run in this coat or any other coat. So I think that's going to be good. We've got a nice coat of primer on there. It's glossing out pretty good on its own. So we will let that sit and come back in a few minutes and put some color on it. Here we are then. So basically at the point where the shininess all gets dried off of your primer, you are ready to go ahead and put your color coat on. So got my black paint shaken up because that's what I'm going to do with this one. There's my Rust-Oleum gloss black paint. It could be, you know, whichever color you're going to use, whether it be red or the factory green or whatever you found. But this is going to be the one I'm doing. So I'm going to go basically back in the same pattern here. I'm going to put a light coat on this. I'm not trying to cover everything here, but I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to get the hard to reach areas first, and then go in and get the easier to reach parts. This will actually be easier to see on this color coat. And again, I'm not going for necessarily full coverage on here, but unlike some other like automotive paints, I'm not really trying to just get a mist coat on this either. I'm going to go pretty decent coat of paint on here. I'm trying to get to where it's fairly well covered, but not necessarily 100% covered. but more than likely it's going to be 100%. So how's that for a brilliant explanation there? I'm really going to go, my next coat's going to be my gloss coat. So there we go. Got ourselves a coat of color on there. Now we're going to let that sit for probably about 15 to 20 minutes because I want it to tack up but not dry. I want it to be still so that the next coat of paint can dissolve into it, but I don't want it to run. So there we go. We'll be back as soon as I'm ready to do that next coat. Well, there we go. That is looking pretty good. Just like that. So what we're going to do is put the second coat on here just to get us some extra thickness and to get it as glossy as we can. So do the same approach that I've done on all the other coats that I've put on it. You want to be extra careful around these areas where you're having to go around obstacles there, because that's where you're most likely to get your runs at. Because you'll actually get 2 coats of paint on there in one shot rather than just the one that you're trying to get, and then you'll get too much and it will run on you. Okay, I think that's where we want it. Put a little bit more on the bottom here. Yeah, that looks very glossy at this point. Thankfully, I'm not seeing any dust in it. So if it will just dry like that, and I think it will, we'll be in good shape. All right. Okay, here we go. We have our fount painted and ready to go. Turned out really nice. I really like the way it's looking here. So now probably I think the next thing we'll do, let's get ourselves a new decal on it. And there you have it. That's how I go about putting the paint job on my lanterns. The fun thing is that process applies to just about any project that you want to spray paint with a spray can. It can be, you know, parts on your car that you're restoring, working on. It can be dozens of different things. The process is basically the same, and you kind of get the same results when you're doing that. So I'm going to wrap this up. This will be part 2 of that build process on that lantern, and then we're going to roll out the next video here real quick about putting that thing back together and getting it fired up. So we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.